I've been giving you two little thoughts at the end of the service. Does anybody remember what those thoughts are? Two thoughts at the end of the service, the last 3 weeks. Does anybody remember? The mind is like a what? Garden. If it's not carefully what? Looked after, it will what? Become a what? It'll become a wilderness. The mind is like a garden. If it's not carefully looked after, it will become a wilderness. And then Paul says, by the renewing of your mind. How do you renew your mind? By the what? It's the Word of God. And then the second thing I've said to you over the last 3 weeks, you cannot be profoundly influenced by that which you do not what? No. You cannot be profoundly influenced by that which you do not know. In other words, this book will never influence you if you don't what? If you don't read it, meditate on it day and night, meditate on this book. Watch what happens to your life when you start doing it. How many of y'all have experienced that? Say amen. Amen. Good. Some people didn't say amen. Just didn't. I want you to be able to say amen. All right, we're in Mark chapter 14. Mark chapter 14. And let's all stand in reverence to God's holy word. Mark chapter 14. After 2 days was the feast of the Passover of unleavened bread. And the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might take him by craft. Who's him? Jesus. They were trying to get him. They were doing all that they could behind the scenes to figure out a way to get him. And put him to what? And put him to death. Not only did they want to get him, but they wanted to kill him. But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar of the people. Oh yeah, there would be an uproar. Verse number 3. And being in Bethany in the house of Simon the what? Leper. Now, I don't know how many of you all would do it. Would you go into a leper's house? Would you go into a leper's house, sit down at the table, and eat? Jesus did. Now listen. And being in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, they were eating. There came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. Oh, it's so precious. That spikenard is a perfume. And she brake the box and poured it on his head. Now, over in the book of John, which we may get over there in a minute, it said that she poured it on his feet, which is always true, because she started at the head and went all the way down to his feet. She literally, and John says she took her hair and wiped his what? She took her hair and wiped his feet. The same woman. In verse 4, and there were some that had indignation within themselves, and said, why was this waste of the ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence. 300 pence at that time was of 1 year's salary. 1 year's salary. And then have been given to the poor. And they murmured against her. Now I want you to listen to Jesus. There is an unbelievable, there's 14 messages in what I'm fixing to read you right here. 14 messages in what I'm fixing to read you. And Jesus said, let her alone. Now folks, that ought to be good for everybody in this room. That ought to be good for everybody in this room. We need to let up on certain individuals. We need to give some people a break We need to let some people just do their thing for the Lord. And we need to let up on them just a little bit. Let them a little bit. Jesus said, let her alone. Trouble ye her. She hath wrought a good work on me. Jesus said she's done a great thing. Verse 7. Please listen very carefully. For you have the poor with you always. Now folks, let me tell everybody in this room something. We're never going to eradicate poverty. It's never going to be gone. Jesus said the poor you will always what? Everywhere you turn, there's the poor. Everywhere you turn, there's the needy. Everywhere you turn, there are things going on. But it doesn't mean that you do something in every situation to help. You don't do that. Remember this. A need, N-E-E-D, does not constitute a call. Are you listening? Just because there's a need doesn't mean you what? Have to do something. You got to pray. And you got to ask God. You got to ask God, is this something you want me to participate in? And then you wait. And if it's something fairly big, I'd say pray on it for 7 days. Anything big in your life you're fixing to do, give it 7 days before you make a move. How many of you in this room wished you had waited 7 days on certain decisions you made in your life? Say amen. Amen. That's where I'm coming from. Verse 7. For you have the poor with you always, and whensoever you will, you may do them good. But me, you don't have always. In other words, the Lord's work is what? Number one. Lord's work. Number one. She hath done what she could. Now, folks, that's one of the greatest thoughts. If you leave here today and forget everything I've said, remember this about your life and about other people around you. Jesus said, she hath done what she what? You in this room, many of you in this room, are doing what you can. You're doing the best. I hope the best that you can. May God bless the reading of His holy word. And all of God's children said, amen. You may be seated. In verse number 8, the Bible says, she hath done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever. Now boy, this is another great thought right here. I don't know how many of y'all have really seen this. This really knocked me for a loop. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever the gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. What she did. Jesus is likening that to the gospel being preached in the whole world. And everybody in the whole world will read this right here. Now think about that for just a moment. That little old girl, that lady, her name, what was her name? I'll get to that in a minute, but who knows? What was her name? Mary. Yes, Mary. It was Mary. John chapter, in the book of John, which we're fixing to go to, tells her name. It tells a whole lot more. And John. Remember Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I want you to remember the Gospels this way. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's like a house. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew talks about this side of the house. Mark talks about this side of the house. Matthew, Mark, Luke talks about this side of the house. And John talks about this side of the house. They're all talking about the house, but they're all looking at it, what? From a different point. From a different point of view. They're looking at it from their mind, and they all see the same thing, but they all see a different part of the house. I hope you'll never forget that. I don't think you will. Now, Jesus was having a meal here in the house of Simon the leper. Imagine sitting in a leper's house and having a meal. Would you do that? Did you know what leprosy, do you know what leprosy in the Bible represents today? Sin. Who said it? Sister. Sin. Leprosy in the Bible represents sin. Jesus was just sitting at the table of a what? Of a sinner. And we do too. We have opportunities, folks. You've got opportunities, unbelievable opportunities, to minister to a sinner. You have unbelievable opportunities in this world. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The opportunities that come your way to minister. The Bible says everywhere Jesus went, He went about doing what? Doing good. Doing good. Oh, by the way, there was somebody else in that house. When I get to John, oh, I think I better go to John. I think I better go now. I think I better go to John. Let's go to John chapter 12. Let's go to John chapter 12. I want to show you somebody else that was in the house. It's so important. Who knows who else was in the house?
Lazarus.
Huh? Oh, sister! Thank you so very much. Thank you. You read it last night. She read her Bible. She read her Bible. You see what happened? When you read your Bible, God will just bring things out. That made my day. John chapter 12. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead. I once was dead, but now I've been what? Found. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I once was blind, but now what? See, Lazarus was once what? Dead. He was dead how many days? How many days? 3 days. He was 3 days. Remember what Mary said? Said, oh, Jesus, if you'd have just come, he's in the grave, and he stinketh. He's been dead 3 days. You know, it isn't the most amazing thing. It isn't the most amazing thing. Jesus can be late, you know, as far as we're concerned. Jesus can be late, but He's always what? Always. He can be late. Martha thought, well, if you'd have just come 3 days ago, my brother would have made it. If you'd have just come 3 days. He didn't come on purpose. Now get ready for this, everybody in this room. You're praying, you're begging, you're asking God, why am I going through this? What's going on? He's not late. He's waiting. Why do the righteous suffer? Why do the righteous go through terrible things? Why do the righteous suffer? I'm fixing to show you something in the book of Hebrews that'll knock your socks plumb off. Because God is going to tell you why He lets the righteous suffer. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom He raised from the dead. There they made Him. Could you imagine sitting at the table? Could you imagine sitting at the table eating with this fellow that you went to his funeral? You went to his funeral! I wonder what happened in that little neighborhood. I really wonder what all happened in that little neighborhood when Jesus raised Him. You remember what Jesus said when He looked at that grave? What did Jesus say to that grave? Does anybody remember? Lazarus, come forth! You know what's so important about that?
Everybody would have come.
You know what's so important about that? He didn't say, come forth. Because if He said, come forth, the whole earth would have erupted. But He specifically said, Lazarus, come forth. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Mary, can you imagine seeing her brother. Verse 2. There they made him a supper, and Martha served. You remember poor Martha? You remember Martha now. There's Marthas everywhere you go. There's Marthas everywhere you go. They're busy, busy, busy. They're doing, doing, doing. They're fixing, fixing, fixing. But Jesus told Martha when Martha came to Jesus and said, Lord, help me. Lord, would you tell her to help me? Lord, don't you understand what I'm going through? And Jesus said, Martha, Martha, Martha. She's doing what's needful. She's doing the right thing. She's sitting at my feet. Are you sitting at his feet? If you're reading that book, you're sitting what? You're sitting at his feet. Sitting at his feet. There they made him a supper. I'll never get to the message today. Never, ever. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, a very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. When she poured out that odor, when she poured that out on him, the fragrance came back where? On her. Whatever you pour out on the Lord, it will what? It'll come back. You've never lost anything. No matter what you give him, you never lose it. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, anointed the feet of Jesus, wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Then saith one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, here he is, Judas Iscariot, the devil incarnate, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him. Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? Then he said, not that he cared for the poor, which he didn't, but because he was a thief. He was a liar and a thief. And he had the bag, and he bare what was put therein. Then said Jesus, I love this, let her alone. Let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. For the poor always you have with you, but me you'll not always have. Jesus was in this little old house having a meal with Simon the leper. And a woman brought a very special gift to Jesus that day. Her expression of love caused a great stir among the people watching. Jesus was touched by the act and the devotion and said, Verily I say unto you, in verse number 9, of, go back to Mark chapter 14, verse number 9. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. I want y'all to picture this a moment. Think about this for a moment. She's in heaven. She's in heaven. All the people in heaven, all the people around the throne, they know what she did. This young lady, they know what she did. Now folks, what about me and you? What are you and I doing for the Lord? What are you and I doing? Are you offering up your best to the Lord? Now you remember the little old lady? Remember the little old lady that gave the widow's mite, the one mite less than a fourth of a penny. Jesus said she gave what? She gave it all! What about me? What about you? Are we giving God our best? Are we giving Him our best in everything that we do? When we're dealing with people, when we're at work, when we go to work, do we put in our time? Do we work as unto the Lord? Whatever you do, do as unto the Lord.
Amen.
Who was this woman? Why did she do this? In John chapter 12, which we read, it recorded the same incident. We know from John that this woman was Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus. And Jesus had been to her house also. Then Mary sat at Jesus' feet and listened to His teachings. And while her sister Martha was busy working in the kitchen. On another occasion, her brother Lazarus was very, very sick, and he later died. And Jesus came and raised him from the dead. So Mary is a woman who knew Jesus. She spent time listening to Him. She knew His authority and the power. The Bible says that Jesus and His disciples went out, and everywhere they went, they healed the sick. And Jesus never went to a funeral that He didn't change everything that was going on. He never attended a funeral that He didn't raise them from the dead. Think about that. And now Mary did something that shocked everybody in the house. She took an alabaster box, which was a jar, a small stone flask with a long, slender neck. It was filled with expensive perfume. And she broke that jar and anointed Jesus' feet. And she took her hair and wiped His feet off. The act was more shocking because of the value of that perfume. And I've already told you that it was a year's wages back then. Bring it up today, and that was $55,000. $55,000 worth of perfume. Why would a young Jewish girl invest so much to buy a bottle of perfume? Why would she do that? In Jesus' time, it was a custom for the young Jewish girls to spend a huge amount on a jar of perfume. And on the day of her wedding, she would break that flask to beautify herself with it. And by doing so, the bride would indicate to her bridegroom that she was offering her best. She was offering her best, her entire life to Him. Are you, am I, giving God my best? When Mary poured out that costly oil on Jesus, she was in effect saying, Lord, I am pouring out my best for you. I'm pouring out all on you. And this was how Mary showed her gratitude to Jesus. She gave her best. She gave her best. The moment Mary gave the expensive gift, some of the people around, they became angry. Judas said, it was a waste. It was a waste. Look in verse number 4 of chapter 14. Look at verse number 4. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, why was this waste of the ointment made? Why was it such a Waste. Now let me ask you a question. How would you define waste? Well, there's no better way than go to Mr. Webster. I love Mr. Webster. He is so smart. And oh, by the way, did y'all know he was a Christian? Did y'all know he was a Christian? Yes, he was. How do we define waste? Okay. Let me give you a definition. Something is considered wasted when it's used in exchange for something else that is lower worth of value. To Judas, it was a waste to spend all that expensive perfume on Jesus. It's a waste. Why waste it? To Judas, Jesus was simply not worth the perfume. But Mary had a different perspective, didn't she? She was so grateful that Jesus raised her brother Lazarus from the dead, and that she didn't know how else to express her thanks to him. She knew who Jesus was. She knew who Jesus was. Do you know who Jesus is? Do you really know him today? How much is a life worth? How do you tag a value to a life? To Mary, the rescued life of a previously dead brother was worth so much, she was willing to sacrifice her most treasured possession to the Lord Jesus. Jesus said these words in verse number 6. Listen what he said. She has done a beautiful thing to me. She has done it. What are we doing? What are we giving to the Lord? Are we giving him our best? Every day. Everything you do. Every place you go. Everything you say. Every action you take. Jesus said in verse number 6, she's done a beautiful thing to me. Brothers and sisters, today, how can we express our gratitude? Well, we can learn from Mary. We can learn from Mary and give our best to the Lord every day. It does not mean we have to give him expensive things. And Jesus said in verse number 8, look at verse number 8, so important. Verse number 8, so important. Listen what Jesus said. She hath done what she could. She did what she could. And what about you? And what about me? Are we doing, or are we holding back? What are you holding back? What have you not laid on the altar? Have you held anything back? Or are you putting it all on the altar? That's the question today. Bow your heads and let's pray. Every head bowed and every eye closed, nobody looking around. Would anybody here today say, Pastor, I need to be saved. I'm coming today. I'm coming today. I'm coming today. Would anybody here today say, Pastor, I'm going to rededicate my life. I'm going to rededicate my life. I'm coming today. I'm coming today. I've not been giving God my best. I've not. But I'm going to do it from this day forward. I'm going to give him the best I can. I'm going to give him the best I can. And then thirdly, anybody here today say, Pastor, none of those first two apply to me, but I want to come to the altar and pray. I've got a special prayer request and I want to come and humble myself before God and man. And I'm going to pray and ask the Lord to help me in my situation.